Two of the most iconic voices in golf are back to save the day and ready to entertain in their newly weekly video podcast. Kostis and McCord, off their rockers.
You have found the place for golf. This is it. Kostis and McCord, Off Their Rockers, a golf production, is back with another episode today. Peter and Gary will join me in just a second. We'll share something that Peter and I went down to Nuevo Vallarta Mexico to help our bodies and our golf game a bit, some cutting edge medical treatment you're not going to want to miss, Renue.Healthcare. But first, we've heard Bryson DeChambeau talking about salty balls, well, salty golf balls, and how he tests them. So let's get over Peter, Gary, Kostis and McCord, Off Their Rockers. Salty golf balls?
The guys have been talking about something. They're a little taken back, a little offended by a lot of this talk out there about some things with the golf ball that are everyone's acting like it's brand new. Gary, tell me about what this whole thing with Bryson.
Well, I mean, Bryson got it all started when he started talking about salty balls, which sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit.
Yeah, it does.
And they're going through this deal of how you do it. You put in Epsom salts, and Peter and I were talking. We had to do that in the day with every golf ball we got, literally, because you didn't know what you're getting. The specifics of the build then were not as precise as they are now. I remember so many times on tour getting golf balls, and I would on the road I go buy Epsom salt, bunch of them. I fill the bathtub up. Okay, instead of doing one at a time, because you didn't know, Peter, I'm guessing I was getting 1 to 3 golf balls per dozen that were round. Is that about?
Yeah, that's so back in the day.
We'd get 6 dozen balls. I'd throw them in the bathtub, Epsom salts, and then you got a marker. Sharpies were around then, believe it or not, and you'd watch these balls and you'd mark it where the ball was coming up out of the water. You'd mark it the first time, and then you'd throw that ball back in and spin it. And if it came up with the line up again or the dot up again, basically that ball was not weighted right. So you take it out of the bathtub and put it on the side. And the ones that did, I put it on the right side. And then once I figured it out, Peter, that golf ball was heavy on one side and would always be heavy on that side because the dot would always come up that you marked it. And then I marked those a certain way on the left-hand side because physics-wise, I thought it was just like mud on your ball. So if the ball that I had was heavy, I'd mark it on the light side and the heavy side. So now, if I wanted to not hook it as much, I would put the heavy side on the right side of the tee. I did. And I don't know if I didn't or, whatever it was. Probably a placebo. But that's how I did it. If I wanted to hook it, I just switched the ball this way. And the good ones I would find, I'd keep on the bag. And then we also, the Epsom salts, to find out if it was weighted properly. You didn't know if they were round. So Peter and I remember having those. Peter, you said you still got one. We had the ring. Yeah, you got a ring. And you got
a lot of people had them on their golf bag.
Yes. And you put the ball through the ring, and if it stuck, throw it away. If it just barely could go boom down, it was good. Then
then the really good ones.
The real good ones, and I did this on the mini tours. I can tell you stories. I had pocket on the bottom of my bag on the right-hand side. And I get the ring, and this was a golf ball company, a fledgling golf ball company from Japan. And I was representing them. And I could drop the ball in the ring, Peter, from here, and it wouldn't hit either side. And it go through. And those golf balls went in a certain par 5 packet on my right-hand side of my golf bag. And I remember a couple times playing with some guys that were long in the mini tours back in the day. And they'd outdrive me by 20 yards. You get to a par 5, and I outdrive them by 15 to 20 yards the other way. And I take this ball out, hit it. They go, "What the hell was that?" And I go, "Oh, just a certain at the bottom. You just kind of flick it and make sure the back of your left hand stays there." And I get some more yardage. But those are the balls you could drop from up here, boom, down through. So Bryson's not, Peter.
Yeah.
Bryson's new with this. We did this forever in the day.
This is like, well, and we got to remind the younger viewers who might be watching this podcast that the golf balls were liquid center. They would have a little rubber balloon that they would inject with sugar water, basically, and then they would freeze it. And sometimes it wasn't round, right? And then they would wrap elastic around it to get to the right size. And sometimes the elastic would yeah. And so and that's why players back in the day wouldn't play more than 3 holes with a golf ball, because sometimes the rubber band, the elastic on the inside, would break from hitting it, right? And so the golf ball became unusable. It was out of round or whatever.
Yeah.
So we had to McGregor back in the day. I mean, they had the liquid core things just blowing up. You get a dozen balls and you open them up, and like 8 of them were like oblong, whatever. Yeah. But we had to check them for. And when we putted, at least what I did is I put the heavy part on the bottom. I had a dot there, and then I figured out that if I put a line between the light and the heavy part, that's when I first started using a line on a golf ball. It wouldn't be like parallel to the stamping or whatever. It would be where it was in the salt water, right? Yeah. And so at least I knew the ball would be rolling correctly on the green, because sometimes you get a ball and it'd be wiggling around, and you think you made a good stroke, and you have no idea why the ball went over there, right? So, this is what's old is new again. You know,
here's one for you. I don't know if you've heard this before. I don't know if anybody's heard this one before, but I talked to a guy that did it. You remember the greatest gambler the world's ever produced, Titanic Thompson? Okay. His name was Alvin Clarence Thomas, better known as Titanic Thompson, back in the 30s and the 40s. Legendary. Byron Nelson played him. All these guys, they all know him. Gambled for so much money, you can't believe it. Do you remember a golf ball called First Flights?
Oh, yeah.
They had a steel center.
Yep.
Remember that? Steel center. Instead of the injected sugar and all that, which was liquid, this was a steel center. So this is what this guy was carrying.
Sidebar to that, Davis Love Jr., Davis Love III's father, when he was playing on tour, he had a side gig on the radio, and they would pay him $1 every time he talked about a player using his Steely.
Really?
Which was that? Paid him $1.
I just said every other word.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
So anyway, this guy, Titanic Thompson, would get in this match. Now listen to this, and this can't possibly be true, but it has the warrant. He would send this guy out, and he took a car battery, and in those days the cups were steel. And the last 3 holes, 16, 17, and 18, he would take plus and minus, put it on there, and charge the hole, and he would magnetize it, okay, by charging it. And then Titanic would play the True Temper or the First Flight golf ball, the steel center. Now, I don't know. I don't know if you can magnetize the ball to attract rather than repel, but the guy said he'd never, ever miss inside of 4 feet. Just get around the hole and he'd just go in. And I thought, that's really outside of the box right there. Bryson, you can have all you want, but go ahead and get a steel center ball and magnetize the hole and see if that helps. But he swore he did it. So one of the legendary stories of Alvin Clarence Thomas, Titanic Thompson.
Wow.
But anyway, I thought it was funny, Peter, when I was watching Bryson and talking about
salty balls.
And everybody going nuts, and you see him floating balls and trying to do it. Dude, we did this for 100 years.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting how little sense of history these young guys have anymore. You know, it's just like, really?
It really is.
It's like I used to tell my kids when they got their driver's license, they thought they invented the wheel. No, it's been around a while.
When we come back, Peter will share a story when he and I went down to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico to Renue.Healthcare and had some cutting-edge stem cell treatments that you might want to hear about. And later, we'll have another great tip from Peter that's going to really help your game on Coach Kostis. Kostis and McCord, Off Their Rockers, a golf production. We'll be right back. Kostis and McCord, Off Their Rockers, a golf production, is brought to you in partnership with Golf Magazine and Golf.com. Peter Kostis and Gary McCord give their one-of-a-kind perspective featuring no filters takes, irreverent humor, and unparalleled understanding of the game. You can subscribe to Off Their Rockers for free on our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. Kostis and McCord, Off Their Rockers is made possible by the generous support of sponsors, including Foresight Sports, with the #1 launch monitor on the PGA Tour, the Quad Pro, and their amazing simulators. Kostis and McCord, Off Their Rockers isn't just a copycat golf podcast. It breaks the mold, offering premium video and audio content that entertains, educates, and connects. With Peter and Gary's friends like Jim Nance, David Faraday, and more, behind-the-scenes stories and instruction, making each episode an adventure for those who live and breathe golf. On Off Their Rockers, the future is bold, the banter is sharp, and the fairways are limitless. We hope you enjoy Kostis and McCord, Off Their Rockers, a golf production. So while we were down in Puerto Vallarta, Peter had a chance to interview the founder of Renue.Healthcare and tell us a little bit more about what they do to help you feel better.
I am in Greater Puerto Vallarta with Steve Anderson, the founder and managing partner of Renue Medical Center. Steve, great to be here with you.
Peter, thank you. It's been fabulous to have you.
We've had a great week. We'll get to that in a second. But tell me how this whole place came to be. What was the incentive? What was the genesis of what now we call the Renue Medical Center?
Yeah, so about 12 years ago, I got diagnosed with a really awful degenerative disease that the so-called experts in the United States said that I would be forever be in a wheelchair in the next 4 or 5 years. I was headed for a wheelchair. Now, having been a former professional athlete myself, that was not an appetizing idea.
Not good. Whether or not you're a professional athlete or not, that's not an appetizing idea.
I think that's right. So very active, like to work out, like to play pickleball. So I used to play professional tennis, played on the ATP Tour for a couple of years. And so really was a troubling outcome. So I went on this kind of round the world search to try to find someone to help me with my condition. And I found a physician in Beverly Hills, California, that was actually in a stem cell trial. And so I didn't know what procedure I was having done. I trusted my physician and at home, and I went to Beverly Hills, and now I understand commonly what it is, but basically it was autologous stem cell transfer. So they took a big cannula and jammed it in my flank and pulled out adipose material, or commonly known as fat. And they spun my stem cells out of that and re-injected that in my lower lumbar area where all the degeneration had taken place. And it worked. And I haven't had a treatment since that time. It was a miracle. And I got into the recovery room with the physician, and he said, I wish we would have done this in my office in Dubai. And I said, well, besides the shopping and the beaches, you know, and the restaurants, what are we talking about? And he said, well, we could have used allogenic cells in Dubai or donor cells, but it's illegal to do that in the United States. So I started to question him about why. Why couldn't I do it in the United States? Because at that point in my life, I thought that medical care, the sun rose and was high in the sky and set in the United States, and nobody else knew how to do medical care. Nobody had the same technology, same quality physicians, all those sorts of things. Boy, was I wrong about that. Outside the United States and Canada, there is a tremendous amount of exciting and new technologies and things that aren't subject to the same kind of draconian and political environment that's inside the United States. And so that's really how it got started. Is I went from there to really try to understand longevity. And it was David Sinclair who told me, who's at Harvard Medical, who's written a book called Lifespan, who said to me, Steve, you're never going to understand this until you understand that the problem is not these downline chronic illnesses. it's aging. And you have to fight the source of aging. And so I woke up in the middle of the night about a year later and decided I was going to build a medical country club. I'm a golfer, so I love golf. And I thought, I'm going to build a medical country club. We're going to treat only the members and their extended families. And as soon as we started doing our due diligence and really understanding the space and understanding what could be done, it became very clear that there's a real commercial opportunity and that we should open to the public and try to help as many people as we possibly can.
So how did you end up in Mexico, of all places?
We looked at lots of jurisdictions. We looked at the Bahamas, we looked at the Caymans, Panama, Colombia, Singapore, I think that, and Mexico. And it became really clear to us that about 8 years ago, the FDA equivalent in Mexico called COFEPRIS put in place some really good regulations around regenerative medicine and stem cell therapies and that sort of thing. So what's different in Mexico than in the United States? In the United States, the relationship between the physician and the patient is highly regulated by the government. The government basically tells you what you can do and what you can't do. And that even was incredibly prevalent during COVID, right? I mean, you had physicians trying to prescribe things to help people that were off use, and you know, their lawsuits, and some people lost their licenses, and it was really kind of a mess. In Mexico, what's different about that relationship is that the government can't regulate that relationship. So if the physician thinks it's a good idea and the patient thinks it's a good idea, they can't regulate that relationship. And that's incredibly helpful when you start to get a little bit outside the box, where you're not just doing symptom management, which is really what's happening in the United States. Medicine is not really being practiced anymore. It's very much sick medicine. It's something catastrophic happens and you go to the doctor, versus the physicians being proactive and trying to set yourself up for success over the long run. We see a ton of patients with what are called musculoskeletal issues, right? So hip, back, knee, you know, the joints are wearing out, right? The human superstructure, hell, we were all supposed to be dead when we were, you know, late 40s, right? And of course technology has changed that now, and we're all living longer. But we get a lot of patients that come to us like that, and we fix those issues, of course. And then once we fix those issues, we see them come back. And now they want to really work on their bodies, they want to work on their systems, and they want to make sure that they can live a really good quality of life, which is what we're after. Our tagline is elevate your quality of life. I mean, that's what we think.
You know, it's one thing to live longer, it's one thing to play golf longer, but
we spend a lot of time with people trying to help position their body to heal thyself. That's the thing that I think that is missed in the United States is that the body still has this incredible ability at almost any age to actually heal itself. You just have to set it up and position it properly. And that's really ultimately what stem cells are, right? I mean, the reason that all these chronic illnesses exist is that it's the non-straight line, it's not a straight line reduction in the number of stem cells in your system, right? But when we were babies, I mean, we had billions of stem cells. You take somebody, the average male over 65 years of age, and they're in the hundreds of thousands at this point. And then ultimately that's what happens, is that the body can't heal itself anymore, and you expire. And so we really work hard on trying to get people to heal thyself.
So what's the difference in your approach and your abilities with stem cells here in Mexico as opposed to what you can get done in the States?
Well, I think it depends on where you have them done, right? So in the United States and Canada, it requires the use of what are called autologous stem cells, or your own. That's where they take a big cannula and they stick it in your fat area, suck out some fat, and then they spin the stem cells out of that. We take a much different approach outside the US and Canada, where we actually take donor stem cells and we grow them into an army to then either be injected through IV or intra-articularly through some type of a joint, maybe, you know, knee, shoulder, whatever.
So what do you say to people who might be a little leery of using someone else's cells, the donor cells?
Yeah, we get that question all the time, and the answer is a very technical answer, which I'm happy to give, but in layman's terms, when you use donor stem cells, they don't emit something called MHC2. They do, but it's a very low amount. So your immune system doesn't see them as foreign, which is the real risk, right? It's called graft versus host disease, which is what people worry about. But since it's actually technically safer to use the donor stem cells that we do rather than your own. And that's kind of counterintuitive to people, but technically by the science, that's accurate.
Okay, Steve, but what about the chain of custody?
Yeah, chain of custody is something that's really important to us. And that's why you'll notice when you come in here, and you did notice that we have what's called an IO6 lab, right? So we can handle everything up until infectious disease, right? And that's where our stem cells are done. So the umbilical cord comes in, we take the Wharton's jelly portion of the umbilical cord, which is donated to us by a donor where there was a successful birth. So mama and baby were okay. Then we take that material, we send it out to a third-party lab, we test it internally, they test it at the third-party lab, we agree that it's safe material, and then it grows inside our lab, inside the facility here, until you came, and yesterday we took them out of the lab, across the hall, and injected them into your knees. Now, be it that along that process, they've never left that laboratory, they haven't been on a bus overnight, they haven't been out of our custody, and then even though that we've had them inside that laboratory, as soon as they came out, they went into the testing room where we did flow cytometry testing on them, and we did bioavailability testing. So we tested to make sure that they were what we said they were, that there were the number of them that we said there were, and that the bioavailability of them was at 90% or more.
You know, when I said I was coming down here to see you in Mexico, some friends and family, full disclosure, they thought I was crazy. They said, whoa, Mexico, not that safe. And the medicine down there can't be as good as it is in the States.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for trouble, you're going to find it. And I think that's anywhere. Puerto Vallarta, for the last 4 years, has been ranked the second safest city in Mexico. So yeah, does Mexico have its issues? Sure, with the cartels and all those things, but that's all kind of on the borders, and that's not, we're in the heart of Mexico here, and this is really a beach town. This is a really family-oriented beach city. So it is safe. We have petty crime like every other city does in the world, pickpockets and that sort of thing, but you know, this is not anywhere, I mean, this is by a factor of 100 safer than Chicago, Illinois, right? So I think it is safe, and that plays itself out every day. As it relates to the healthcare system, I mean, look, you've been here, we did both of your knees, we also, we're in the hospital itself, we went to the other side of the hospital and we used a CT machine to do cardiac tomography, where we made a whole 3D rendering of your whole cardiovascular system to look at it. That was a brand new GE machine. There's only one of those in Mexico. We own it. The technology is the same if you went in Scottsdale or Paradise Valley. It's the same technology, the same quality. I mean, you tell me. Does it seem any different than?
No, it's spectacular. I mean, the place is spotless. The doctors are brilliant, to my thinking. They take you through what they're going to do, what they're doing, what they did. You know, the old story, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And it's wonderful. You feel like you're the only person here.
Yeah.
In terms of the way you're treated, right?
Yeah.
You know, I see a whole new area coming down the pike due to regenerative medicine. I think regenerative medicine is going to be huge with weekend warriors, collegiate athletes, professional athletes.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's really, we treat a lot of professional athletes. We now have 16 Champions Tour on the PGA Champions Tour that represent the hospital, right? That's got to say something, that many folks would want to come and be treated and try to continue to play at the high level they do. So we treat lots of professional athletes from all the sports, right? And some of it's recovery. You know, they come down after the season, they try to recover. Some of them on their off weeks will come down and spend a few days and try to recover. But it's not just musculoskeletal. We have we have 17 different physicians at the facility in the different specialties. So we have a sexual wellness program for folks that are struggling in that area. We've got a performance program where we can help people make sure that their hormones are optimized so that they're operating at kind of the highest level that their body can. All that to kind of the chronic diseases where we treat a lot of traumatic brain injury, or we will treat cognitive decline, Parkinson's patients, Alzheimer's patients. So we kind of cover the waterfront, if you will. And I get questions all the time about why do you treat so many different things? Why do stem cells treat so many different things? And the answer is a really simple one, which is that the majority of chronic illnesses are caused by the lack of stem cells, right? So think about Parkinson's for a second. So Parkinson's is a result of the lack of dopamine cells, right? That's what causes Parkinson's. And so it's the same in most of the reason why these we see these repetitive motion injuries like knee injuries, or what we would call musculoskeletal injuries, really surround kind of the joint areas. And the reason is because inflammation sits in there and no one does anything about it. They say, well, it's not bad enough for me to do anything about it. The truth of the matter is that the way that you should think about that is when there's inflammation in that joint, it's melting the joint. That's physically what's happening. And it's gonna get worse. It's just a matter of time. And for a lot of patients, unfortunately, they come to us and they say, it is excruciating, you gotta help me. At that point, it's bone on bone, right? And it's too late. Yeah. Nothing we can do at that point. There's nothing to graft the stem cells to in order for that.
Well, I'm personally excited because I got my 2 knees and my knuckle done on my right hand where there's a little bit of arthritis from hitting so many golf balls. And thank you for hosting us. Thank you for what you're doing here. It's a tremendous facility. And McCord, eat your heart out. I'm going to hit it even more than 30 yards by you.
So, Peter, you had the stem cell treatments to your knees. You haven't been down there yet.
I don't need to.
I had it to my ankle, my arthritic ankle. Peter, how are your knees doing now that it's been more than 4 months since we've been down there?
Full disclosure, my doctor here told me that I was looking at 2 knee replacements. And I was going, no bueno, I don't want to do that. I will explore any option other than that right now. And so we went to Renue. I had stem cells done to both knees. Generally, you don't see, you see instant improvement because of the anti-inflammatory nature of the injections, but it takes 90 days or so before you really start to see. I'm now 4 months in, 120 days, and I went 18 holes the other day, completely pain-free walking, which was, it's been 3 years since I've been able to do that.
Wow.
I wasn't able to walk uphill, downhill because of the pain in my knees. I've got at least another couple more months of regenerative therapy, I hope, from the stem cells, but I couldn't be happier. I mean, I'm pain-free and actually able to use my legs again in the golf swing like I was supposed to.
For my ankle, I've had arthritic ankle from an old football injury, high school days, and while I'm not quite having as much success as Peter, it's 50% better, which is a lot. So whether I'm making a golf swing or I'm out on the pickleball court, I have less pain, I have a little bit more mobility, and tell Gary about how nice the facility is. It's really first class.
They have a super secret injection that'll add 20 yards. It's 20 yards.
Special.
I'm in.
Special
In fact,
20-yard
I'm gonna get
injection.
2 shots. Okay? 2 shots.
To find out more, go to Renue.Healthcare for more information. And we'll be back with some more stories about Renue.Healthcare. We'll get Gary down there to try to get 20 more yards at special injection.
Don't go away because we've got a great tip from Peter that's going to really help your game on Coach Kostis. Kostis and McCord off their rockers, a golf production. We'll be right back.
Visit our website, KostisMcCord.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or podcast, and follow us on social media at Kostis McCord off their rockers.
Hello, friends. It's Jim Nance of CBS Sports, and I urge you to like and subscribe my brothers, Kostis and McCord, off their rockers right now. You'll enjoy it.
Now it's time for Coach Kostis. Peter gives us some great tips to help our games.
Little bitty golf ball on the ground, little bitty golf club up in the air. Now, if you try to make this club go under that golf ball precisely at the right point, you got a hard job to do. That's why most players who are successful don't try to do that. They don't try to get under, they don't try to lift and scoop. Instead, what they do is they catch the ball on a descending angle. It's called angle of attack. And what happens is the low point of the swing occurs someplace, depending on the club, 3 or 4 inches in front of the golf ball. So you have to learn how to cock the club up, strike down into the back of the golf ball, and get your low point in front of this golf ball, not underneath it. Now, how do you practice that? Well, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. The string that I used in my practice station, I can put it down a few inches behind the golf balls, and I can swing, and don't try to hit the rope, but hit down. That's what most people do. They'll get the rope first, right? It'll disappear. I don't like that. I don't like setting up the rope every single time. So I stole an idea. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I stole an idea from McCord. I just put a towel down. I take this towel, I put it down 3 or 4 or 5 inches right behind the golf ball, and I'm going to set up now, and I'm going to swing, and I'm going to learn to miss the towel, hit the golf ball, and get my low point out in front of the golf ball. As with all exercises, start slow, start small, and then as you gain confidence, lengthen it out and speed it up. But you have to experience what it's like to catch the ball and have the divot be out in front of the golf ball, low point, 3 to 4 inches in front. If you can do that, you're going to get better compression, better consistency, and better control.
Thanks so much for watching today's show. Hope you enjoyed Kostis and McCord Off Their Rockers, a golf production. If you want more information about Renue.Healthcare, that cutting-edge healthcare facility down in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, go to Renue.Healthcare. That's RENUE.Healthcare. That's their website. You can get more info. Also, thanks to Peter and Gary for sharing their stories about salty golf balls. And remember to like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Kostis and McCord Off Their Rockers, a golf production. It's Kostis and McCord Off Their Rockers is going to be bringing you some more great guests and, of course, great tips from Coach Kostis. And we're going to be giving you a little insight on what happens behind the scenes and what's going on in the world of golf every week here on Kostis and McCord Off Their Rockers. For Peter and Gary, I'm Mike Abram with the Golf Agency. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you again real soon.